Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating concept, and it comes straight from a 1990 lecture by Ryuho Okawa. Now this is a completely different, incredibly structured take on what actually happens after we pass away. We're not talking about pearly gates or harp music or just fading to black. No, this source material frames the afterlife as a totally immersive educational journey.
Think about it for a second. What if the very first thing you do after death is literally go back to school? Just imagine arriving in the spiritual realm, and instead of facing some intimidating judge who's ready to weigh all your earthly sins, you're actually greeted by an angelic figure. And this figure, they're basically acting as your academic advisor and teacher, holding a metaphorical syllabus.
And according to the lecture we're looking at today, you're going to be in class for quite a while. We're talking 3 Earth years, to be exact. That's the amount of time the average person spends in this compulsory education period. So, what's the core focus of this mandatory curriculum? Well, it's called the Ontology and Activity Morphology of the Soul, which is really just a fancy way of saying it's a deep dive into learning exactly what a soul is and how it really functions. Here is our syllabus for today's explainer. Arrival in the 6th dimension. Subject 1, soul splitting. Subject 2, soul siblings, a field trip to hell, and finally, the life review screen. Let's get right into it.
All right, Module 1, Arrival in the 6th Dimension, the orientation phase.
Right after passing away, the newly arrived soul typically enters the upper levels of the 6th dimension. And here, you're greeted by angelic guides and immediately assigned to this mandatory orientation. Now, you might be wondering, why is it mandatory? Well, even though you quickly realize you've lost your physical body, your human mind is still entirely intact. The source explains that these newly arrived souls show a heavy, stubborn resistance to the logic of the spiritual world. They're still thinking like humans, totally bound by physical laws, so they absolutely need immediate, hands-on lessons to break through those earthly illusions.
Moving right along to Module 2, Subject 1, Soul Splitting. It's a bizarre first lesson that honestly terrifies a lot of new students.
Okay, so in this incredibly wild lesson, the teacher tells the student they need to split their spiritual body in 2. And naturally, the student absolutely panics, thinking, wait, no way, if you cut me in half, I'm gonna die. So, to calm them down, step 1, the guide summons a senior spirit who has already mastered this. Step 2, that senior spirit perfectly divides in 2 right in front of their eyes, creating 2 identical, fully conscious versions of themselves. Pretty crazy, right? Finally, step 3, the student actually attempts it. They experience dividing and have to accept that both forms are entirely equally them. It's this shocking, practical exam designed to prove that a soul can literally be in 2 places at once.
Which leads us straight into Module 3, Subject 2, Soul Siblings, where we explore our interconnected past lives.
So, once the student finally accepts that their spiritual body isn't bound by physical limitations, the curriculum expands. It reveals the soul's deep, interconnected past. The concept here is soul siblings. This is a single spiritual group made up of a main body and its branches from various past lives. And together, all of these make up the complete you. The source outlines that your current identity, the you who just arrived from Earth, well, that's just one single branch. The lecture actually compares it to a single hand attached to a much larger, ancient spiritual body. You aren't just an isolated individual. You're part of a vast network of interconnected past lives, sharing this massive collective spiritual history.
But, what happens if a student just can't grasp these abstract, metaphysical lessons? That brings us to Module 4, a field trip to hell to observe cause and effect. That's right, a field trip. The destination? The Hell Realm Observation Lab. Guided by their higher spirit teacher, the student travels down to the lower realms. And down there, they observe spirits running around. But not as humans. They've been transformed into animals. The main example given in the lecture is seeing a pig running around in the mud, and of course, the student naturally assumes it's just a regular animal that somehow ended up down in the underworld.
But then, the teacher points at the animal and tells the student, look closely at its face. You will slowly see the face of a human. The source material describes how the student stares intensely at the pig, and suddenly, the features actually begin to shift. It's a chilling realization, honestly. That animal isn't a pig at all. It's a former human being, trapped in a mutated spiritual form.
And that horrifying realization kicks off Module 5, the Life Review Screen, seeing the unhidden truth.
Because naturally, the shocked student asks, how on earth does a human become a pig? Well, in the physical realm on Earth, you can totally hide your true nature, right?
But in the afterlife, your inner mindset, things like extreme greed and a complete lack of shame, instantly and literally becomes your physical appearance, taking the form of a pig. The inner completely dictates the outer. Up there are absolutely zero secrets. To prove this cause and effect to the student, the guide projects a video screen right there in the spiritual realm. It shows a roughly 3-minute highlight reel of that soul's past earthly actions, and it proves this undeniable link between character and spiritual mutation. For instance, if someone engaged in repeated shoplifting without any remorse, that stems from an inner mindset of extreme greed and self-centeredness, and the result? The spiritual manifestation of a pig. Or consider someone who is constantly attacking and insulting others. That shows a combative, uncaring mindset, right? Their spiritual manifestation? Literally growing horns straight from their head. It's pure, inescapable cause and effect played out visually so the student can truly understand it. So, the ultimate lesson of this entire 3-year compulsory education boils down to this. Your soul's form is the physical manifestation of your unhidden truth. This really rigorous syllabus strips away all those earthly illusions. It forces the newly arrived soul to objectively understand its own pure, unvarnished nature exactly as it is. I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought for today's explainer. If your inner mindset instantly shaped your physical form today, right this very second, what would you look like? It kind of brings this whole 6th dimension curriculum right back down to earth, doesn't it? Thanks so much for joining me on this exploration of the Afterlife syllabus, and I'll catch you next time.